My name's Charlie Griffiths. I'm kind of Director of Technology and Innovation at AAG. And on the call this morning, we've also got Ian Gelder, who is one of our technical consultants, who is going to actually take us through the live 365 hack and actually show us how simple and easy this is to do. Okay. In terms of the risk, so cybercrime is I think, as probably most of us are aware, growing massively. It kind of sits in, we see this in mainstream news on a regular basis. And, just for a couple of stats, from a couple of stats perspective, the UK has got the highest number of cybercrime victims per million internet users. Last year, that was kind of 4,783, which is kind of up 40%. So this, cybercrime's growing year on year. Ultimately, the bad guys are making lots of money out of it. They're reinvesting and doing it even more. They run these organizations like sophisticated businesses. Ransomware has cost businesses more than 75 billion last year, and 50% of businesses have suffered a ransomware attack. I think that stat's actually slightly higher when you look at that over a period of time, because there's very few organisations, when you look at it back certainly over the last 10 years, that haven't suffered some kind of form of cybercrime, whether that be to a greater or lesser extent. Why is this whole awareness piece important? Ultimately, we run quite a lot of cybersecurity awareness sessions for our clients, and this needs to be a cultural change. So cyber awareness isn't just about protecting our businesses. These are things that, there's some basic measures that we're going to talk about over the next couple of slides that we should have in place, within our personal lives as well as our businesses. So anywhere where you've got personal data, sensitive information, kind of photos, credit card information saved, you should have a very basic level of protection in place. Ultimately, the messaging that we're going to give you is passwords alone these days are just no longer good enough. Historically, we would have said that multi-factor authentication was a really good thing to have in place, which it absolutely is. But what we're going to show you today is even with multi-factor authentication in place, in certain circumstances, that's not good enough either. So we need to raise awareness of these threats. We do know that cybercrime is massively underreported. What we're seeing, if you've had any kind of cyber insurance renewal premiums through, the level of information and detail that they're now asking for is increased massively. The expectations, even from a small, from an SME business perspective, is, they do expect you to have a decent level of cyber security in place. Where we've seen lots of examples, and it's kind of reported quite widely about where claims aren't being paid out because actually the information that's been provided was inaccurate, or there wasn't an appropriate level of protection in place itself. What we're also seeing an increase of, and again is widely reported, is an increase in fines issued by the ICO. So if you do suffer a breach or an issue, those should be reported to the ICO. And again, as long as, I think from experience, as long as you're kind of open and transparent and you've got the right level of protection in place, they're actually really supportive. But where people have given misinformation, the ICO have certainly come down quite heavily recently. We mentioned before about kind of password safety, and ultimately the messaging is that passwords alone aren't good enough anymore these days. This is an up-to-date table that shows how easy it is and how long it takes to brute force a password. So if you've only got a password that is protecting access to your online account, your log into your computer, you log into your Microsoft 365, you log into your Amazon account where your credit card information is saved, the table attached shows how long it takes, basically on different complexity of passwords, it would take to guess every single variation of that password. Now, where I kind of point customers to is in the right-hand column, which is basically a password that contains, a mixture of numbers, uppercase, lowercase, letters and symbols. If you've got an 8-character password that would have historically been deemed as complex, with the latest hardware that has come out, that now only takes 5 minutes to crack an 8-character password. What you can see is even things like a 6-character password, they can now be cracked instantly based on modern hardware capability. Last year, the 8-character password stat was 39 minutes. So in the last 12 months, that's come down by 34 minutes of how long that will take. So if you've only got a password that's protecting yourself, we really want to be getting you down into this kind of bottom right-hand quadrant. These are passwords that will take a lot longer to kind of crack and force their way into. So we need to be having longer passwords. So using things like passphrases, you can use sentences. One of the tips that Ian kindly shared was about using something like what 3 words. So if you struggle to come up with a password and you reuse the same or a similar password and you just change the number on the end of it, or you just change the special character, if you use something like what 3 words, you can go and pick a square on the globe, or it could be a section in your back garden, and it will give you 3 words together that you can use and that will make up a reasonably complex password. So if you want any information on that after, we will be kind of sending some contact information out, and feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you some guidance. The other way that passwords are that people kind of gain access to our passwords is they can be kind of either lost or stolen, or breached or stolen. So often there's third-party websites, or when systems are kind of hacked into, that they will try and steal password information. So one of the things that we're able to run for you, and if you'd like us to, again, please feel free to reach out, is we can run what's called a dark web scan on your email domain or your business domain or just your individual email address, and we can tell you if any passwords have been kind of lost or stolen historically, and so that you can do something about it. So in this example, we can, if we know the breach source, it will let us know in the column on the right hand side, and if from the password perspective, we can actually get it to reveal either the full password, but we have a standard in place that will only ever show you the first 3 characters. And I can guarantee whenever I've shared this with customers previously, these passwords are either passwords that they've used historically, or they are current passwords that are in use. So this really is an issue that we need to tackle. One of the things, so what we are going to show you today is what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. So part of this whole process is that we are going to send a phishing email from what's the threat actor. In this case, it's going to be Ian, who's going to simulate an email that's being sent through to somebody, and ultimately we're going to try and get them to trick them onto clicking into a link that will allow us to capture not only their username and their passwords, but it will allow us to capture the security token that's generated when they go to sign into a website. So to explain that process, when you sign into your Microsoft 365 or your Google account or any other service, it prompts you to put in your username and password, which is fine. And then if you've got multi-factor authentication set up, it will prompt you to put in either the 6-digit code or press approve or decline on your phone. Or if you've got like a USB key, it'll use that to verify you as an individual. But once you've done that verification process, what the website actually does is it creates a secure token, and it issues you with that token or a key that says, okay, you've been verified, here's your token, and your computer saves a copy of that token, and it allows you to sign into the website itself. Now, what will happen during the process that we're going to show you is the malicious actor that sits in the middle is going to watch that entire process, and he's going to take a copy of that token himself. So even without knowing your username and password, he can use that token, inject it into his machine, and it will let him sign in instantly as you, with all of your permissions and all of your information. And again, hopefully we'll show you kind of how simple and straightforward that is to do, which becomes quite scary. Just kind of continuing the theme about passwords. One of the things that we know is that people still use passwords that can be researched about themselves. So either using, kind of just this kind of little meme on there, but either using information that's either an anniversary date, birthdays, children's names, pets' names, all sorts of things that actually we can start to guess, and a hacker ultimately can start to research about you as an individual. So we've got to be really careful about the type of information that we share on social media, the sort of things that can be researched about you, things like, mothers' maiden names, children's names, pets' names. I'm sure we all see people who share far too much information on social media, which is ultimately giving away kind of a security profile about ourselves and as individuals. So in terms of managing passwords, what we would ask is, for the passwords themselves, obviously make them complex, but store them in a secure location. Don't have them on bits of paper or sticky notes. Don't save them in Excel sheets on the shared drive. You'll be surprised at how often that we go to a customer and we do an initial audit now, and you do a search on the shared drive for the word password, and we'll come across an Excel sheet that's unencrypted, that somebody's conveniently for everybody else saved a list of usernames and passwords for people to share. Now, if somebody gained access to that system, that is like the golden ticket for them. Even if it's kind of just online portals or tender portals, there's all sorts of sensitive information that can be kind of gleaned off the back of that. Don't be sharing passwords via email or on Teams chats and things like that. They become unencrypted and easy for somebody to find. What we really strongly suggest is that you use a password manager. So that means your passwords are kind of stored in an encrypted format, that they're secure, and ultimately we secure all of your passwords with one really strong, super strong password with multi-factor authentication against it, which you can then sync across multiple devices. So you can access your passwords, whether it be on your mobile phone or from your laptop computer, or from any other device, which is really secure but still really easy to use. So it'll do things like autofill passwords on websites, and and it will create you automatically unique, strong passwords for every service. The password manager that we use, I've kind of listed a few on there, but the one that we recommend, and again, we obviously absolutely sell this, is something called Keeper, and that's because the technology that's used within Keeper is, from the research that we've done, seems to be kind of one of the most secure password manager products out there. I have got LastPass listed on here, which they have fixed some issues, but it's certainly not something that we recommend anymore, because LastPass, as an example, last year got breached themselves, and the type of technology that they were using that kind of came out in the wash, as it were, caused some significant issues towards the end of last year. So password manager is still a really good thing to use, and ultimately the benefits of that is, going back to, we've got one strong password to access them all. They're stored securely. We can autofill passwords within websites, and we can sync it across multiple devices. Just some tips, kind of mentioned this earlier, don't use things in your password that can be researched about you. Try not to use names, try to make them unique. Use something like what 3 words to generate passwords. Ideally, use a password manager, because it'll create you something completely random that's really strong, that then becomes, it's auto-generated, makes it nearly impossible to guess. From statistics wise, we can see that, there's still too many people that are writing passwords down on sticky notes, people that are reusing passwords for multiple accounts. So just changing that number on the end, and just changing the special character or capitalizing that first letter. They know we do that. So if somebody guesses one password, it's really easy for them to just go and try the variations around that, which I'm sure none of us do, but I'm sure quite a few of us do as well. So don't, so again, there's just kind of a few stats there to take a look at. And that's kind of where I'm saying, use kind of passphrases, not passwords. So write a sentence or put a group of words together. So as we've got here, an example of, a great password, is something like, my son was born November 1995, exclamation mark. So we're just putting a sequence of words together, which is easy to remember, but it makes it much, much harder for that to kind of be brute forced or guessed. One of the tips that we'll give you as well is from a special character perspective, you can use a space within a password. A lot of people don't know that. So if you want to type out a sentence, a space is deemed as a special character. So, hopefully that kind of helps make it a little bit easier in terms of getting a longer password that's still easy to remember, because that's ultimately one of the issues. Sorry, before it's on that slide. Thank you. So two-factor authentication. So whilst this kind of is going to sound slightly ironic, two-factor authentication is still absolutely something that you need to have in place. It will still protect you against a lot of different types of attacks. So, the method that we're going to show you today is only one type of attack. Multi-factor authentication will still protect you from somebody that's stolen your password, or somebody who's guessed your password. They still need that security code or that device, or for you to click on a button to click on approve. The one thing I would say to you is, if you must have multi-factor authentication configured on your email, without question, and even think that not just your work email, but your personal email account. So just thinking that through, if somebody gained access to your email, they will be able to research, looking through your sent items in your inbox of where you do your online shopping, where you've got sensitive information saved, where you've got accounts signed up to. Now, they don't need to know, once they've gained access to your email, they don't need to know the passwords for those other services. Because, as you know, if you've forgotten your password, all you need to do is to go to Amazon.com, click on the forgotten password link, pop in the email address, and it'll conveniently send a reset password link through to that mailbox where they can just reset the password and let themselves in. So if they want to go spending on your credit card, they can absolutely do so. So, whether this is kind of a work email account or a personal email account, multi-factor authentication is something that you really must have in place. Just some guidance around that as well. We've gone through an exercise with our clients of getting them to move away from this, but text messages and phone calls are deemed as not secure anymore. The reason for that is they can be redirected. So there's cases with SIM cards where you can contact the mobile phone provider, or hackers have done that and had replacement SIM cards sent out, and they've been able to do something called SIM jacking. And then in terms of phone calls, if a phone system is compromised, which again is not necessarily an uncommon thing, it's quite easy then just to have that phone call redirected, or for them to contact the network operator, and with some information and potentially researching some security questions of getting phone calls redirected to another number. So if you've got multi-factor authentication set up to ring your desk phone, or it's coming through as a text message, that's something that you really need to change, because they are not secure ways of communication. So getting on to the hack itself of what we're going to do today. So the goal that we're going to achieve this morning is we want to send a legitimate looking email, and what we're going to try and do is capture the user's Microsoft 365 login credentials. How are we going to do that? So prior to the webinar today, what we've gone and done, or what Ian's gone and done, is we've purchased two different domains. So the first domain we purchased is, as you can see here, is knowbefore.co.uk. Now, KnowBefore is an online cybersecurity training platform. It's something that we absolutely promote to all of our customers, and will provide users with ongoing, regular cybersecurity awareness training. So little bite-sized sessions. They'll get a test at the end of each one, and we can then provide monthly reporting that we can show that everybody's doing their training, that they've passed the quiz, and that cybersecurity awareness is ingrained within their business moving forward. So, but what we're going to do is we've bought knowbefore.co.uk, but the legitimate KnowBefore company is their email domain is knowbefore, as in be4.com. So at a quick glance, they look very similar in terms of the back of that. So we're going to simulate an email coming in from KnowBefore that we're going to try and get the user to perform an action. So hopefully this is a tool that they're going to recognize. They go, yeah, we use KnowBefore, so yes, I'll click on this link. We've also purchased another domain called inmicrosoftonline.co.uk. And this is to simulate that when we redirect the user to the Microsoft 365 login portal, and you'll see this as we kind of go through the process, that at a very quick glance, and I appreciate if you look at it in detail now, but at a very quick glance, you can see Microsoft Online and it potentially looks legitimate. There are other ones that we've purchased in the past as well. So we're then going to send a phishing email from KnowBefore to the users, and we're going to ask them to set up a single sign-on process. So ultimately, we're going to ask them to click on a link to do a process that's going to make their lives easier moving forward. So that's what we're going to try and simulate today. In terms of a few tools that we're using as part of this, so we're going to use a product called GoFish, which is basically an open source phishing framework. Its legitimate purpose is to provide, employee training and cyber awareness email campaigns. So, but we're going to use that for kind of malicious purposes this morning. We're going to link that into a online email marketing platform called SendGrid, and that will SendGrid basically allows us to for the domain that we've purchased, that we can make sure that it has all of the appropriate verifications in place. So some of the technical details that we set up when we configure an email domain. So if there are any technical people on the course, so things like an SPF record, a DKIM record, email, basically DNS settings that say this is a legitimate domain. So when a spam filter goes to check the email that's coming in, it's going to tick all those boxes that says, yes, this is a completely credible domain. It meets all the security criteria, and ultimately will trick the spam filter into thinking, yes, this is good, and it will just kind of pass it straight through. We're going to use ChatGPT. So you've probably heard of, it's fairly widely heard in the news, but we're going to use an AI tool that's going to help us create the email itself. So with ChatGPT, there's all sorts of automations and AI things that we can do moving forward, and we're going to run future webinars on that. But it will take us through the process of creating the HTML code. So we're not coders. Ian's, certainly not a coder, but we're going to use ChatGPT to create the code to create that email itself. And then the bit that links all of this stuff together is a product called Evil Jinx. Again, the clues in the name with it being called evil. This is the actual nasty bit that links all these things together. That's going to allow the hacker to see the credentials that you type in. It's going to create the malicious link that we're going to get the users to click on. And it's going to allow us to capture that security token to let the users through. So I'm going to kind of pass over to Ian now, who's going to kind of share his screen, and then we're going to just talk you through the process of this hack. So thank you, Ian. Have you? Great, I can see your screen there. So. So in terms of the first thing that we're going to do, or Ian's doing, is that we've signed in to an online AI tool called ChatGPT. So ChatGPT you can use for all sorts of different things. You can just go and ask it a question or ask it to do a task, and it will ultimately either come back with an answer or do it for you. So, and you can give it kind of a very basic question and level of detail, or you can actually get really quite complex about it. We are running a session on ChatGPT in a few weeks, so kind of look out for that webinar. But in terms of the purpose for today, what Ian's gone and done is, is just typed into ChatGPT, create a convincing looking HTML email from KnowBefore, prompting the user to click on a link to set up SSO, which is called single sign-on, with their Microsoft 365 account. That is the only thing he's typed into ChatGPT. What ChatGPT has then done is, you can see below is a load of kind of complex code, and we're not going to go into the detail of this, but ultimately it's converted that question or that request from Ian into some code that will create us the email with all the links and the tools, off the back of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There is a note on there that says, as always, please remember that this code is for example purposes only. It should not be used for any malicious activity. So, yeah, I've worded that.
So, and again, this is purely a simulation that we're doing. It's contained within our lab environment. So, this is certainly not out in the wild.
Yeah. So that's created basically this email. This is the HTML code.
Yeah, so from that code, kind of just putting that, converting that into a web page. And again, we could, we're keeping this quite simple and basic today. We could go and modify this and make that look even nicer, with a little bit more kind of coding experience, or even giving ChatGPT a little bit more information to add colours and things like that into there, or kind of branding, but really quite simple and straightforward to do. But we've got a simple looking email with a button, and kind of let you read through the email itself, but ultimately there's a button that says, set up single sign-on with Microsoft 365. So that's the action that we want people to do. So moving on from there, we are using another tool called GoFish. So as I said before, GoFish it's effective like an email marketing tool. Which it's an open source piece of software, but its legitimate purpose is actually to send legitimate online training and security awareness emails to businesses to support the cyber awareness strategy. What we're going to do with KnowBe4 though is we need to create an email template. So using the code that we generated in ChatGPT, all Ian has done here is copied and pasted that code into the HTML format within here, and that's created his email template. So in essence, once you've got this software installed, that would take about 30 seconds to create that email, and just to go to ChatGPT, copy and paste that code straight in here, and straight away we've now got our email template. What we then need to do is to the button that we've got within the email itself that says to set up the single sign-on, we're just amending one line of the code to add in there the basically the malicious link that we want the users to click on. So that's where we're just going to jump into another tool now called Evil Jinx. So Evil Jinx is, the clues in the name, is really the nasty bit that sits in amongst this. So using Evil Jinx, we can create what it's called a lure, but ultimately we're going to create a link using the in Microsoft online.co.uk domain. And you can see the link that's been generated, at the bottom of that email. Now, all we're going to do is to take a copy of that link that's been generated using Evil Jinx, and we're going to and we're going to paste that into the email itself, which, as you can see, Ian's already done there. Using GoFish, because we need to do the email verification piece, we've already set this up to link into SendGrid, so that gives us the capability of sending what looks like a legitimate email that's going to tick all those boxes, that's ultimately going to verify that this is a legitimate email domain that meets all the complexity requirements, and we're going to route it through a legitimate email server. So there's a much higher chance of this email actually being delivered to the user and not getting caught in the spam filter. What we're then going to do is we add our users in here. So the hacker is going to have a list of email addresses that he's kind of stolen or captured or has gained access to from somewhere, and it could populate this with thousands and thousands of email addresses in there. So there's a really broad-ranging campaign that runs, and it's going to send via SendGrid that email template that we've created to thousands and thousands of users. Through the platform, then we can then track that the email's been delivered, whether they've clicked on the link, whether they've submitted any data off the back of there. So in real time, the hacker can watch this kind of Go Fish platform. He's just sent all those emails out to everybody, and he can see, right, okay, I've had, somebody's clicked on the link over here. And once he sees that somebody's clicked on the link within that email, what he will then do is jump into Evil Jinx, and within here, he will start to be able to see that the credentials that have been captured. So I'll kind of let Ian kind of go through the next step now that we'll kind of simulate this whole process.
Yeah. So we've set the phishing campaign. We've sent a couple of test emails to a couple of our targets. So this is one of our target users. I think it's Alex. Alan De Jong. So this is the email that they've received. So it's come straight into their inbox. It hasn't gone into their junk email folder. It looks quite legitimate. You hover over the link, it goes to trusted.knowbefore.co.uk. So again, it hides the malicious link.
So this is a really, really important point to understand. So historically in cyber awareness training that we've given, one of the tips that you give to people is, look, check where the emails come from. Okay, well, actually, if we check this really closely, we can see it's not the legitimate know before email address, but it's very similar. So we could be really easily tricked into thinking that is genuine. But what we've always said to people is you've got to hover the mouse over the link, because that will tell you where it's actually going to go. Now, in this case, it's not doing that. It's masked it completely, that it's going to this kind of know before domain. Now, it would have looked quite obvious previously that it was going to go somewhere else. So this is because what we'll see is once we click on this link, it's going to actually redirect us to the fake Microsoft login page that we've created. So as you can see in the URL address box at the top, it's gone to login.inmicrosoftonline.co.uk, which isn't the know before, the trusted.know before link that we were seeing when we hovered the mouse over. So the user's clicked on the link, we're in via the malicious address, we go to sign in. Now, the important thing to notice here is, even though this looks like it's a fake login page, it's pulled through all of our custom branding. So all the customization that's been done on the customer's tenant here, it's pulled through the branding, it's changed the image. So this is actually logging us in to the genuine Microsoft 365 page. So we pop the password in, which we can see is a complex password. It's now going to prompt us to complete a multi-factor authentication request. So we're going to do a number verification match in this case. So this is all what this is all what the user who's received the phishing email is kind of going through, because they think they're going to set up this single sign-on process. So we complete the verification. And from a user's perspective, they've kind of got, okay, it's a little bit odd. It's signed me into my 365 page. This is my normal 365 login, but it's not necessarily done what's expected. So they might just kind of move on, or at that point they might log a request, or they might try and contact the sender. But ultimately, they've signed in and verified to their Microsoft 365 credentials. Now, when we go back to Evil Jinx, what we can see has happened here. And Ian, I don't know if you just kind of want to talk through what's on the screen.
Yeah, so what's happened is that the attacker can see the username in clear text. It can also see the password that's been typed in clear text. But also, more importantly, it says all authorization tokens are intercepted. So if I type in sessions, I can see that it's captured that token. So little green says that it's captured the token. So if I type in sessions 11, this is that secret token that Charlie was mentioned earlier. That is what is needed by the attacker to actually authenticate as that user without using MFA and without having to know the username and password.
So yeah, it's just basically a load of encrypted code. That is this token that is going to inject. So, and this to me is the frightening bit now of how simple once the hacker's got that token, this is how simple it is for him then just to sign in as you.
So what I'm using now is a little extension in Firefox called Cookie Editor, which allows you to inject or import a cookie in. So all I'm going to do is paste that token into here and click import. And then if I refresh the page, it signed me in as Alan without having to multi-factor authenticate, without typing my username and password. It's just let me straight in.
So hopefully you can see the final bit of that process for the hacker to gain access to your account is unbelievably easy for them to do. This is a fairly straightforward process. You know, we're showing this in its basic form. All of the tools. And again, obviously the bit to remember is once they've signed in, they've got all of your permission. So all of your files, all of your emails, all of your historical content, you know, access to your kind of OneDrive and SharePoint and shared calendars, you know, all sorts of research that can then be done about your organization all through somebody's mailbox. And they will then typically go and do some additional steps to maintain that they keep access. So there's some technical things that they can do in the background, like creating what's called an app password. And if that isn't disabled within your tenancy, that will leave the hacker with permanent access into your mailbox, and they'll just sit there. You know, they're not looking necessarily these days to go and do a smash and grab and try and destroy data and information. They'll sit there and watch email transactions and just wait for the right opportunity. So, you know, where you've got things like, you know, invoices that are going backwards and forwards, if they can gain information that will allow them to send another spear phishing email to somebody else, they'll kind of do that as well. So hopefully you can kind of see how kind of easy and straightforward that is. So let me just kind of take the screen back. So what can we do to stop this? Some preventative measures. So firstly, going to some of the basics is ensure all your software and systems are regularly patched and maintained. We still need multi-factor authentication in place for all systems where possible, especially where you've got kind of any sensitive information or data around. We strongly recommend that you implement kind of a robust cyber awareness training and testing platform. KnowBe4 is one of the best ones out there. I've seen lots of different ones over the years, but in terms of the content of the material that's easy for people to watch and to get people engaged in, that's something that we strongly recommend, and we can certainly work with you in terms of getting that implemented. Making sure that you've got a robust password management system in place, that we're making sure that we've got strong, unique passwords for kind of multiple services. Again, we recommend something called Keeper, but again, there's lots of other kind of different products that are out there. In terms of protecting against this type of attack specifically, what the thing that we need to do moving forward is not just verify the user and the user's credentials. From a business perspective, we need to make sure that we're verifying the device that you're going to access your system from as well. So we need to make sure that things like your laptops and desktop computers and your mobile phones and tablets are enrolled within a device management platform. Now, if you have the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license, that comes with something called Intune. And Intune gives us the capability of enrolling all of your business devices into the kind of Microsoft 365 platform. So we can then say that actually to access your system, not only do you need to have a username and a password and multi-factor authentication, but you can also only access it from a device that we know about. So it stops people from picking up kind of little Johnny's laptop out of his bedroom that we don't know, the level of security that's in place on that device, or whether it's got some kind of infection around it. But equally, where we've got a hacker that's sat, somewhere else in a different location, unless they've stolen one of your devices as well, they're not going to be able to gain access to your system. So that's the way that we do it within kind of the Microsoft 365 landscape and using that business premium license. The other option that you've got around this is using what's called a hardware token instead. So we can set, they're either called FIDO keys, but the common one that we use is something called a YubiKey. And it just means that actually, rather than verifying the device itself, a device that you use, you would need to have to plug in your security token or your YubiKey to verify that it is you that's accessing the system, and it's not just somebody that's gained access to your credentials. And they work the same, they've got like little NFC scanners on there, so they work the same way in terms of verifying your phone and kind of keeping access in terms of that way. So those are kind of two kind of easy ways to kind of prevent against this type of attack. It doesn't compensate for making sure that you've got a robust cyber awareness training program that goes on within your organization. Lots of organizations will do those as kind of one-off sessions, which are great because it makes sure that everyone's kind of they kind of get it, they get a chance to engage and ask questions and kind of really understand the whole process. But ultimately, what tends to happen is when you only deliver those as one-off sessions, that 2-3 months goes down the line and people are back into their normal day-to-day, and you just naturally forget some of the things that you've been told. So making sure that cybersecurity awareness piece is done on a regular basis is kind of really important. Okay, so that's it for the session today. If we've got any questions that anyone would like to ask, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you want to stay back, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have got. In terms of a follow-up, we will send you all an email with a link to the recording of the session today, and there'll be an opportunity on that email as well. So if you'd like to book a call with us and discuss any of these elements in more detail, we're more than happy to kind of set up a call and kind of run through those with you. So we've got a question come through. Is it safe to keep passwords saved in your browser? I used to tell people to save their passwords. So if they did follow the link, it prompted them to put in their password. It proved it was not a legitimate. Site. Yeah, in terms of saving passwords within your browser, again, as long as you've got kind of a secure password in place that's protecting your local machine, not necessarily got an issue with that. The same circumstances still follow through. Is if you're using like if you're using Chrome, make sure that your Chrome account has got all the appropriate security set up. And the same with your Microsoft 365 credentials. Just make sure that we haven't got a weak password that's kind of protecting access to it. Some of the advantages of kind of the kind of password manager. So again, nothing necessarily wrong with saving it in your browser, but the ability to share passwords with other people, you don't necessarily get through the browser side of things. So saving your own personal passwords is fine. But if you've got a team of people that you work with, or finance departments or sales teams that sometimes will have shared accounts or access to shared portals, there's not really a secure way of doing that just within a browser itself. So you'd need a password manager to do that. But yeah, nothing overly wrong with saving it in your browser, as long as you've got the appropriate security in place protecting that account. Okay, lovely, guys. Thank you very much, and hopefully we look forward to speaking to you soon.